All right. My pocket watch tells me that it is top of the hour. I'll get started. Hello again. I just had a group conversation for the secure stage yesterday. My name is Kenny Johnston, and your other host is Dahlia, who is the engineering director for the ops stage. Let's get started. The slides are on there. First question was from Scott. Scott, would you like to verbalize it?
Hey, Kenny. Hey, Dahlia. You have a pocket watch, huh?
The digital pocket watch.
Okay.
It also serves other functions.
All right. What's the number one thematic priority for both of the groups here, configure and monitor?
Yeah, I'll answer across both of them, and then Daniel and Sarah, if you want to contribute your specific thoughts for configure and monitor specifically. First and foremost, it's dogfooding for me. The configure and monitor stages are in this ops groups at the end of the DevOps lifecycle. And we talk about wanting to be the complete DevOps platform, but we ourselves don't use it for that complete loop. So really focusing on our own team's dogfooding. There's a couple of initiatives. We met with Devin Silva from the infrastructure team, where they're moving some of the non-core applications to using auto DevOps and monitoring and use our new incident management capabilities. Sorry, my dog's talking to me. And so I think that is going to be first and foremost, really get our own experience and have a dogfooding team give us rapid iteration on those capabilities. And then, I think we've done a lot with auto DevOps, but we're going to put up some pressure on auto DevOps to work in more robust places. Auto DevOps is great at getting you started, and I want it to kind of also evolve with applications as they become more mature and move into production. So those would be mine. Daniel, you want to go first if you have any additions? Daniel might not be on.
I am on, yes,
Okay.
Sorry. I was on mute. Yeah, let me open up the presentation.
First,
I think,
I don't have a thematic priority for configure maybe over the next 2 or 3 months.
So our immediate priority is bringing both auto DevOps and the Kubernetes integration to a viable stage. I think that we're already there with Kubernetes integration. The kind of the last bit we had there was the ability to uninstall the GitLab managed apps, and that is mostly all merged. And then for auto DevOps, it's making auto DevOps smarter about when it should run, and that it should only run when it can add value. So that is something that we're currently working on, and we expect to merge as part of Call 2. And then immediately after that, we also want to bring our serverless category to a viable state, and that means things like having SSL by default, the ability to provide a domain for each one of your functions without you having to configure anything. So that's going to be a focus for the coming months, and we'll also spend some time bringing some of the other categories to minimal. Specifically, I'm thinking about chaos engineering and cluster cost optimization, which may be collaboration with Monitor. We'd like to make that happen before the end of the year.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. Sarah, do you have anything to add on Monitor, specifically for the health side of things?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Scott. So I'd say building on top of what Kenny said, closing the DevOps loop specifically for Monitor, I'm focused on incident management, which is that last part. So giving people the ability to react to what they've built, understand how it's performing, and then in the future providing system recommendations for how they can infuse operations back into their planning cycles. So incident management right now is at minimal, and by the end of Q3, we're going to be at viable, closely followed by planning for the complete maturity level. And so that adds on nicely to what Kenny said from a dogfooding perspective, is getting incident management to a state where our infrastructure teams are seeing value in it, and then learning as quickly as we can from them, so that we can expand the number of GitLab Monitor users who are finding value in that platform, and then spreading that through GitLab as a whole.
Thank you, Sarah.
Cool. Christopher, want to verbalize your question?
Sure thing. On slide 11, you show some momentum on throughput as the teams are growing, but we also note that the team size is largely stabilized for the year because we've reached staffing, I believe. So I'd just be curious to hear, like, time frames for where we think throughput stabilizes and kind of what our targets are there.
I'll take this one. So yes, Christopher, you're right. We're fully staffed for the configure backend group. We believe we have enough bandwidth on front end as well. So this particular group is not lacking. So I expect throughput to start to stabilize at the level that you're seeing right now for July. So July has been a really great month. However, that team is also helping onboard the serverless group. So there's still close coordination between the teams, which is extremely valuable because serverless is a brand new team. Gors has been doing a fantastic job, seeding the team and working on those initiatives, but we still need to onboard additional engineers, and Nick, welcome, joined as the engineering manager for that team. Again, they're brand new. So there's gonna be a little bit of a tail to onboarding, which I expect to impact a little bit of throughput, but generally the configure stage should start to stabilize in a month, I would say. Does that answer your question?
I think so. What about on monitor? How do we feel there?
On monitor, we're still onboarding a few new folks. We also have a few additional vacancies. So if you look back at slide 5, we are doing well. However, we still have about half of the team, brand new engineers. So I expect that ramp up to still continue before we see throughput stabilize. But it's been really good to talk about this data with the monitor stage. We've seen impact on splitting the team, or we believe that was the impact from last month, not July, sorry, in June. So that was good to watch and focus on our initiatives to communicate better, to align the backend, both groups together, because they used to work as one team, and now we split into 4. So, fine tuning our practices and making sure that we are still optimizing and working fast and efficient and all of that. So it's nice to see that July, brought us back to a good level, because that's what I want to see as far as efficiencies with the teams working.
Yeah, it seems like we have if I do my rough math in my head, we got about 15 folks working between health and APM. So our target should be roughly around 150 once the team is fully ramped, and excited about all the new players involved. So really excited all the great hiring we've done, but just looking forward to continued velocity in that area. Thanks.
Cool. The next question was from Dan. Dan, I'll give you 2 seconds to come off mute. You mentioned that you might not be able to before I voice over for you. 1, 2. Okay. Dan asked, we are pushing multi-cloud as one of our differentiators, but today we only make it easy to connect and create a cluster from GCE, GKE cluster. What are our plans to do the same for AWS and other cloud providers that provide managed Kubernetes services? Daniel, do you want to take that one? I know the AWS one is underway.
Sure. So yeah, that's exactly right. We're currently, as part of 12.2, we are working to kind of have the same ease of use that we offer with GKE clusters in EKS on the AWS side. So we'll aim to do that as part of 12.2. Right now, we don't have any other providers on the pipeline. We kind of want to come up with a more repeatable process to add more providers, and we hope that this is going to be the chance for us to do that. So yep, EKS 12.2 and no hard dates on any other providers.
Yeah, and I'll say, Dan and I have been working closely with the Alliance team to see if we can engage those individual cloud providers to provide that integration. It's in their interest for it to have just as much ease of use for creating clusters on their infrastructure. Sam, would you like to voice your question?
Sure. So you talked about how we have integration with a Google Kubernetes engine in projects, and customers can also provide their own Kubernetes cluster. Do we see customers using one of those features more than the other? And do you have any thoughts on why that is?
Sarah has some data that might be tangentially related about Prometheus installations on self-managed versus not. But Daniel, maybe you can cover first your experience in just attaching clusters in general.
Yes, so historically, I can say that we've seen that other clusters, non-GKE, are at higher numbers. And the reason for that is that just like, the spread of the cloud market is one. I would say that for any given cloud, we see a lot more clusters, let's say on AWS, and I can tell you that more anecdotally. When I have conversations with customers, we have a lot of customers that are already locked into one cloud, and all of the stuff that they do is in one cloud. So we see, for example, a lot of deployments for Kubernetes on EC2 VMs. So that's very common. And another very common is that we see our self-hosted customers or self-managed customers use Kubernetes in their own data center. So I would say that it is higher. I have a dashboard that I can share with you if you want to kind of drill down into more specific numbers. So I'll put that in the notes so everyone can take a look at it.
Cool. Sarah, do you want to voice your response?
Yeah, I half read the question and then pulled back some information on Prometheus installations, which was very tangential and did not directly answer Sam's question, but it's there for consumption. Overall, we're seeing that when people are using Prometheus to monitor either their infrastructure, external applications, or GitLab itself, more often than not, they're deploying that via GitLab directly using Kubernetes. So again, did not answer Sam's question, but it's an interesting contribution to the conversation.
Yeah, no, and I think overall we have to remember that as a product, we have this convention over configurations. We have the convention of we'll deploy a specific Kubernetes cluster in our conventional way. Same with Prometheus, but we shouldn't always expect that the majority of users use that, right? The convention is meant to get people started for those who want to use the out of the box, but we support the non-conventional methods. It's actually really interesting, the Prometheus data that more are using. That might be a sign about difficulty in attaching your current Prometheus cluster, or maybe Prometheus just isn't that well utilized outside of GitLab if the majority of them are coming from are being GitLab self-managed. Jarv, do you want to voice your question?
Sure thing. So this is sort of a strategy question. As a lot of people know, we're in the midst of switching over to Kubernetes on GitLab.com for a few services. One of the services we're doing now is the registry. This is a service that we don't develop ourselves. And I went deep into Auto DevOps to kind of see whether it would be a good fit for using it for deployment. It doesn't currently look like that's the case. And I'm curious from a strategy perspective, this is a case where we're not developing the service and we're just deploying it. And we have other cases like this for GitLab.com where I think the Auto DevOps model is sort of geared for you develop and deploy a single application from a single project. Do you think this could change in the future? Are there plans for it to change? And also, like, maybe would we switch to kind of being a tool like Spinnaker, or do we consider them a competitor? Because they offer a lot more configurable sort of deployment model.
Yeah, so the release team I know could probably speak to more about the deployment aspects, and we do consider Spinnaker a competitor. Heavily so when it comes to release. Auto DevOps in general, though, I guess I would say we have a principle in the product direction page, I believe, that says kind of our first class workloads that we should target, or use cases that we should target, are cloud native, and those are necessarily going to be microservices, each probably with their own project. And so I know Daniel's emphasis on moving where you can attach the Kubernetes cluster up is in that vein, so that you can attach it at a group level and then deploy multiple different projects / repositories to that cluster. But there's been some interesting analyst research recently about a move in the industry towards more platform teams, where and was part of also a rethink of our use of the word PaaS, but where organizations are more frequently having centralized teams that manage significant compute resources, or like in our current case, a massive Kubernetes cluster that the other teams can just, the development teams can easily just deploy to. And that comes with a whole host of problems. Daniel and I were discussing on an issue today about a service catalog, and how do you, as an operator of that large instance, have a good understanding of all the different services that are running, or even as a contributor of one of those services, how do you get a good understanding of how your service is going to interact with other services, what APIs are available to you, what version they're on, who the contact for that team is as organizations get larger. So I think definitely we would expect to have support for that use case as almost a first class, because that seems to be, that's our skate where the puck is headed mentality. And I don't know how much of that involves auto DevOps specifically adjusting in order to support it. And Daniel, I know you've been thinking about this. Please chime in with other additional thoughts.
Yeah, so it is fair that we know auto DevOps doesn't cover kind of every single use case under the sun there, but we do want to get to a place where it covers the most common kind of cloud native development scenarios. And I know that we are placing kind of a high focus on dogfooding. And if we come across an internal project like the one that you mentioned, John, I think that it's if we identify that it's kind of a common cloud native use case, we would definitely want to go forward and add the features that would support that use case. That being said, if it's more of a legacy use case that we think that it may not be the case for a long term, then probably we would evaluate. But yeah, I would love to talk more about that specific use case and get more details.
One thing you mentioned is attaching the cluster at the group level, and this would be something that we would really like, because the way we've structured our projects, I think a lot of other people do this, we have one cluster, and then we have a bunch of projects that deploy to it, and attaching each project individually to the same cluster doesn't necessarily make sense. So that would be a good, is there an issue that I can track for having a cluster attached at the group level?
Yeah, so that is all functionality that is out there today. Today, you could go to a group and you should see a Kubernetes option on the left-hand side, and you can add the cluster at the group level, and it's available also at the instance level. So if you're an instance admin, when you go to settings, you'll see a Kubernetes menu on the left-hand side, and both of those are available today.
Sounds good. Thanks.
If I can chime in here, I think this is really important that we use our own product. We have never made something in GitLab successful if we haven't used it ourselves. And a big reason why we don't see the usage yet for monitoring and auto DevOps and instance attachment is that we're not using it ourselves. There's probably 30 big bugs that everyone's hitting. So the first way to get through that is to start using it ourselves. Our version control only became popular after Dimitri started using it. Our CI only became popular after we started using it. Our planning only became popular after we started using it. All of the stuff we're not using ourselves isn't popular yet. And saying things like, hey, of course we want to support like common cloud native use cases. So there's two options. Either our infrastructure team is trying to do something that is common and we should support it in the product, or our infrastructure team has to change into a common workflow. But either of them end up with us using our own product. So the outcome of this investigation, it would be very unlikely, it would seem very unlikely to me that the outcome is that we cannot use our own product ourselves. This is GitLab run in a cloud native way. Hence, it makes sense that we support it. And Daniel, I'd like to see you in issues like this, like issue 7297, discussing with the infrastructure team and making sure that we can support this, because this is the first one. This is a relatively straightforward one. It's not going to get any easier. If we miss this one, then there's an argument to miss the next one. And before you know it, we have GitLab.com running outside of GitLab. We have to dog food. We have to run our own things, because if we're not even prepared to use it, nobody will be. If we end up starting using Spinnaker because our product can do it, we might as well give up on our release strategy, because then every company in the world will do it. So this is important, and this is urgent.
Yeah, and that's a fair point, Sid. Thank you. I think that we have spent some energy into dogfooding auto DevOps in different projects. So yeah, we will definitely take a look at this one as well. And I'll follow up. Thank you.
Yeah, Daniel, I'll point
Thanks.
you to I had a discussion with Devin, who's on that issue that John mentioned, who's going through the process of some non-core applications, moving them to auto DevOps. And so I think you've been involved in that discussion. Him and Tori moved design over, but we need to also focus on more core applications, especially for the monitor one, that we would actually wake people up in the middle of the night if they weren't available. And so we had a discussion yesterday with Devin about that. I'll send you the recording. Cool. No other questions. So I'll go ahead and close. You can join us in S-Configure or S-Monitor if you'd like to continue the discussion. Thanks, everybody.